Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this lesson on painting the tulip field. I love painting tulips, and for the landscape for April, I thought we should do a tulip field. And I think that's when all the tulip festivals are. They're in April, so I thought, why not? And so to start off, I've got an 8x8 canvas. And I've got up here, you might not be able to see it, but there's white, black, and I didn't put Indian yellow out. I'll just be using cad yellow, yellow ochre, orange, quinacridone red, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, transoxide red, transparent oxide brown, sap green, viridian, dioxazine violet, and I put a little dab of phthalo turquoise because phthalo turquoise is a really strong color, and I would only maybe use it in the wash for the underpaint. So the first thing I do when I have a square canvas and I've got this rectangle reference photo, I'll just hit edit on my photo, and then I go to crop, and then I go up here, there's these little squares within squares or rectangles within rectangles, and then when you hit that button, it brings up original freeform square. You hit square, and then you can move your picture into, basically kind of makes your own little thumbnail. So I'm going to just use that and then hit done. And now I've got a square reference photo to go with my square canvas. So sometimes, another thing is, sometimes your canvas, you'll notice there's some little warps here. Those will go away. It was a lot saggier earlier. You just give your canvas a little squirt on the back, and then you can get these little wrinkles out. I have an old brush that I use for doing this, so it's all worn out, and I just get the water right into the cracks, and those will just eventually all go away, just so you know. I'll get rid of those little warpies, later. All right, so I kind of look at my reference photo and I look at, like, okay, what's the main color here? There's pinks, reds, there's some white. I want to play with those colors, though, further into my landscape, but without them becoming like overly dominating. So it'd be kind of nice to see little hints of pink maybe in the background behind the trees, and we'll figure something out. I kind of play as I go. So I'm gonna get let's see, just one of my old silver Bristol-on brushes, and it's a 8 flat. And what I'll do is I'll use a bit of this red oxide in the background, because the red oxide has a nice, when you put it on a white canvas, it gives sort of a reddy glow, pinky glow. And I might add a little bit of, this quinacridone red, just a tiny, tiny touch of it, so it's not too red, and we'll just give that a whirl here. I want to put that where I know kind of it'll be in the background, because I know on the layer of paint that's on top, we'll have all those, tulips. So this will be more of kind of a layer that's going to be, might even be a little bolder with that pink. Add a bit more pink into that wash where I know that tree line's going to be. And then I'm just getting a little more turf on my brush there. And get some more of that. Get some of that in the foreground. Might even add a little dioxazine violet into that mix, just to even, warm it up some more in the foreground here. And maybe some more of that quinacridone red just want to create sort of a variety of color in the underpaint there. And I can bring something like a little bit of that, more of that pink in there, and I won't put lots of paint up here because I want the blue sky to stick. So I'm going to just now wipe that off, and just kind of spread that around. And I'm using a Viva paper towel, but I know some of you have tried to get them and haven't had luck, but you can get the blue. I was in Walmart and they have them in the automobile area, and they're called Scott Paper makes a blue paper towel that you can use for detailing cars and everything, and they're just as smooth. So okay, so now we have something there that we can start working with. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I'll just move to a little bit of a smaller brush. How about this number 4 flat? And I'm going to just kind of sketch some things out. So you can get a little ultramarine blue just to darken the color a little. And a little bit of that red oxide, just to make kind of a bluey grayish color. And I want to look at putting in kind of the horizon, but I don't want it right in the middle, you know, that's one thing you don't want to do. So we want to have it around here. Just gonna draw that in. And then we got that nice blossom tree, which we're gonna, I picked this reference photo because I love Van Gogh. His paintings always have these really pretty blossom trees, and one of my favorite painters, Van Gogh, so I always love the little blossom trees in all the fields he painted. So I'll put some of these, just a little bit there. It's gonna kind of fill in over here, and then there's a little bit of a tree line, and then there's a little tree off in the distance here, and that'll be good to sort of draw that in, just so we have a comparison. And then we got all these beautiful little tulips kind of coming down in little waves of color, and just kind of draft where those are going. And blossom tree kind of is going to take up most of that space, and then we'll put in a little one here that's, it's like a different tree way in the distance, but I'm going to make it another little blossom tree. Okay, so now you kind of know where everything's going to go, and we'll make this tree line a lot more interesting than it is now, but at least we know where everything's going to go. So now what I'm going to do is just get a bigger brush. I'm going to go to back to a 6 flat, and I'm going to just get a little bit of, I'm just going to kind of block in the different colors. So I'm going to get some of this quinacridone red, and there's a lot of pink in here, so I'm just going to start kind of dabbing. I don't want individual tulips so much, but it'll be more of a wave of those little tulip bulbs, you know, the little flowers kind of popping up there. And then, and oh, one thing I forgot, I don't know why it wasn't on my list of colors here, but I'll put out some alizarin. I don't know why I didn't put out alizarin. Strange. Anyways, I'm going to put out some alizarin so I have a different type of red for those real red flowers. There. So I'm going to get alizarin for this group of red. And I'm just going to block in. You can add the individual, ones later, but I want to get I'll use a little bit of alizarin to show the shadow on those. So there's going to be that light pink, but then they have sort of a darker red shadow. We can use alizarin under that. And then the alizarin for the red flower will be the darkest red, and then we'll make a nice bright red highlight to show the tops of those. So, and then there's white, and there's a bunch of different pinks. We'll leave those for now. I just wanted to kind of save the space for those. Maybe I'll put some more pink up here. And maybe just a little pink up here. Okay. And then I'm going to mix up a blue and block in some of that sky. So I'll get some cobalt and some white. If you wanted it to be a little more, we'll add some clouds too, but for now I'll just block in some of that blue so I can get going with my trees. I don't want to, I used to paint the blue in between everything, and I still will, but it saves you some time if you can get the blue down first. Put a few dabs of the blue where the sky will break through the tree. So right where that branch is, there's going to be a nice little bit of blue coming through there. And you can always add more what they call sky holes later. But we're going to just get that sky down because I think that'll help gauge the values and everything as you go. It's hard to believe it's April already, you know. This has been a quick year. And I like the texture in the sky for this one because there's a lot of texture down going on in the field. So, and when I pop in the blue around the tree, I don't mind if it's a little bluer and at first so that we can see the comparison when you put the blossoms on. So I'm always sort of thinking ahead there. Put in some more sky here. And then we'll get some more cobalt and white. And I'm not using any turpentine here, I'm just mixing in that white and cobalt. And then there'll be some blossoms that come all the way down there, so I'll put a little more blue. Let me just get this. So wipe off as much of that underpaint where you know the sky will be there, because it is kind of mucking up my paint. And I like these colors underneath because when you get the blossoms and everything, it's nice to see some of these different underpaints coming through the colors that you put underneath. And we got that in there. Okay. Beauty. And it doesn't hurt to put more. You can always go back and pop some of those little sky holes in there later. But that gives you something to work with. And then we'll add some clouds at the end. But for now, that's good. Okay. I'm liking it already. So the next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna just take, I got this little palette knife and I'm gonna just take a sec and I'll mix up like 3 different greens that are kind of 3 different values. So then I don't have to keep mixing. It also kind of gives me a good, you know, guideline for, you know, values and warm and cool. So we can mix up, you know, 3 kind of good greens to use, because I see there's sort of a lime green, and then there's like a real cool green. So I'm just gonna mix a few greens. So let's get some sap and some of this cad yellow light, and we'll mix up sort of a limey green, and get that in there. And that may be enough, but we can mix more. And then the tulips themselves have sort of more of this viridian green. So I'll use a little yellow ochre and viridian, and that'll give me a nice kind of cooler green. And so when you're mixing these colors, you say, well, how do you know it's cooler, or, you know, or how do you know it's, you know, warmer or cooler? Well, I would have thought this one here is definitely warmer than this green here, because this green has, first of all, it's mixed with a very cool yellow, the cad yellow lemon. And you can just tell by your gut instinct, when you look at it, you can just see which one is warmer, which one is cooler. And then yellow ochre is a warmer yellow, so automatically that's going to warm up this sap green. So we now have that, and then I'm going to mix up a real limey green for like way off in the distance, because that's where you want the coolest and kind of more pale colors to really show it kind of going off in the distance. So we'll get a little white in there, lemon yellow or cad yellow light, and some of that green, and you'll get this nice kind of mix of pale green. So that'll work, and then you can just use some straight green if you needed to darken some of that, but I think those are good to start. So I'm going to, oh, and I might make for the tree line, I'll mix up sort of a color for that. So maybe some more of that sap and a little bit of that cobalt blue, and some white, just to get sort of more of a grayed down green, because we also want the trees to look, you know, further away. And this is a real whimsical painting, you know. I'm not trying to get some sort of realistic landscape, but more of a fun, you know, fun spring landscape. To cool it right down, you can add a little bit, just a tiny dab of that phthalo. Look at how a tiny dab makes so much change to that color. So when you're mixing color, another thing, don't put the color right into the center of your pool of color. just add it off to the side so you don't have to remix the whole entire thing. Just a little tip. Okay, so now we've got some nice greens, and you could even take some of your quinacridone, just a little bit, and some of that white, and you could mix up some more pinks that you're going to use for your tulips. And then you're ready to go, and you can take a little more. So you got sort of 3 values of pink, and then I didn't put out any cad red light, but that's okay. You can take some alizarin and some orange, and then you'll have yourself a nice cad red medium, depending on how much orange you add. But it will really get that red color nice and juicy. So now you've got some bright red to add to your red flowers. Okay, so we still got the blossom trees to do too, so I'm going to block in some of these. Just go back to a smaller brush, I think. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go with my number 6 for the tree line because I want it to be kind of, I want the marks to be looser, so I don't want to have a tight brush to work with. So I'm just going to block in that tree line. And we can always get a little more, maybe some of that viridian in there. And we'll just block that in as a solid, shape for now. And then we've got that kind of lime green. I want to just block that in there because I really want that to show up nice. Get that in there. I'm just trying to make it real simple, the different greens and the different values to get those different greens and layers in there. And then maybe add a little yellow to some of that mix because I see there's a little bit of yellow as it comes down. Okay, and now I can get some of that sap green and mix it into that tree color, and maybe a little cobalt in there just to darken it. And then you can go and you can add a little bit of, some of those darker trees in there. I just put a few, kind of show them by doing some lines. Maybe I need some ultramarine blue in there a bit. And just add a few lines in there. And okay, so now there's a little bit of variety in those trees. And go back to what brush was I using there? I'll use this brush because I haven't used it and I want to just go back now and show you how I'm going to cut in that sky line into the trees. So I'll go and get my sky color and just kind of, I'm going to cut in some of those trees shapes with my sky color now. So I'm just going to make some real, like that. Not, they don't have to be all bumpy, because then it gets just the opposite of what of the effect you want for sort of a more whimsical contemporary landscape. You know, you don't want it to be overly detailed. Like that. So I'm just kind of cutting in. And you can make a few that go right down. And then you can drop this end a little. Just kind of lower the tree line a little. And you have to wipe your brush if you get too much of that green mixing in. Just wipe your brush off, and we'll cut this skyline down here too. And just kind of bring it like that, and then go back to your green, and you can just, over here where they're a bit taller, you can bring a few up high again. So, and then we'll soften those edges off later, but you can see get the idea. And then you can add a little bit of some darker, you know, areas in there to show the different layers of the trees. Okay, so that's good for that for now. And then I'm going to keep adding my greens. So I'm going to go to this. There's some of these up here. I'm going to kind of just make more tulipy marks. You know, there's a bunch of actual stems and leaves and everything. So I'm just going to, you know, really rough in some of that. I'm not going to block that in like I would this area, because I'll show a little bit of that detail. And I'll keep it for now. I won't come up in here because I want to keep that paint area clean for my tulips. And there's some greens coming through the dirt here. So I'll kind of bring that over. And then up here, I'm just going to use some of these nice warmer greens and just block in some of that green that's going to be between the layers of tulips. So I know the red is going to be here. Can bring some of those nice bit of that warm green in here. And you can get some of this lighter green. Put some of that in here. And then as we get up here, I'm going to use some of that little bit of this warm green and add some white to it, just to really get it to, you know, head to the back of the painting. So as you go up, it's going to get just more pastel. All your colors will be a little more muted. Okay, so we can get a little green around this tree here underneath. So you kind of look at your reference photo and you get an idea, but then you can ad lib a little to, you know, make it your painting, you know. It doesn't need to be exact. You want to use the reference photo, and then I'm going to get some more white into my tree line color and just put a little bit of that pale green up near the top of some of those trees, just to show some of those, getting some light and also kind of softening those a bit. Okay, so now we've got a little color there. I've got a fan brush that someone gave me. I could take my fan brush now and just soften some of these marks. So, and I'm wiping my fan brush in between so that this just kind of combines some of those marks and layers and softens some of that in the distance there. You can use your paper towel too. You don't have to use your fan brush. And then I'm going to just look over where my greens are. Maybe I want to I'll add a little more white to that lime green just to soften it a little. And I'm going to put a little bit more green up there. There, so we don't want the flowers all being super, you know, thick all the way up. They dissipate, so I'm just going to kind of fill in. I'll leave some of those nice pinky colors there, but I'm going to just fill in a little here. There. And I kind of like the angle that that's going on. It gives it a nice feeling. And get some of that color there. And just kind of work some of that kind of grayish. There's sort of a grayish color in the distance there. There. So I just used a bit of that cool, you know, mix of blue just in the distance there. So now you can see it's a lot softer back there. And now I'm going to put in some of those lighter colors on my tulips. So I'll just switch to a brush I haven't used because I want to keep the colors clean. So this is a 4 flat. And we get some of those pinks and just dab some of those tulipy, light tulips in there. I'm really want to make those ones in the distance just really kind of more like a wave of pink. And get a little more chirp on my brush so I can really just kind of dab them in a little easier. And we're just going to soften some of those marks. And my canvas I'm using is a little bit grainy, so if you use a smoother surface, it might be a little easier to get those in a little smoother. But you can go back with some alizarin if you want to add a little bit of a shadow line between the rows. But you don't have to. I'm just showing you kind of if you want to go back and add some more dark pink in there. Just use some alizarin. And then we'll get the red in. I've mixed up some alizarin and orange. And these ones we'll just kind of, again, just kind of dab in using your brush just to show some of those tulipy shapes, but I don't want to have, individual tulips. We're just keeping it real loose and kind of abstract. And you can add a little more orange to that mix, even a little bit of white and some of that quinacridone, and you can get even a little brighter red here. So if you're watching this, you could also just get some cad red light or something, that you use to make a night. You don't need to mix this red. You can just use some cad red light. I don't know why I forgot to put that out. And I'm just putting a little more orange in there to get some real lighter tulips. A little bit more white in there. Yeah, a little bit of white. I'll get some ones here that, catch in the sunlight. Just wash my brush off, and then you can put a bit of those white ones in there. But first of all, I'm going to mix up and work on these blossoms. So I'm going to get some white and a little bit of this, you can use red oxide, or you can use white and viridian and brown oxide to make kind of a nice warm gray color. And I'm just going to put in some of that for the blossoms. So I'm going to put in some of that warm grayish white using the brown oxide and viridian, and I can use a little yellow ochre in there. And I'm just going to build up some of that undertone for putting some white. Now this reference photo, you're going to be like, well, there's not much on there that shows me there's white, but I'm just using my imagination, and I've painted so many of these blossom trees. I used to just paint blossom trees and sell. That's all everyone wanted when I lived in Vancouver. Everyone wanted blossom trees because they have so many blossom trees there. So I just simplified it to keeping it more to the white blossoms. Blossoms people like too, but not as much as the white. I guess these are like apple blossoms or something. So I'm just dabbing in some of that warm white underpaint for those blossoms. And now you see why I kind of wanted to get some of that blue first, because it looks good when you cut in the blue, but also it can take a lot of work, so you can do a bit of both. So I'm gonna just get more of that white, yellow ochre, viridian, and a little bit of that brown oxide. If it's too brown, like I just made it, just add a little more viridian. And we'll get this one in here. And I like all those little bits of orange showing through, but if you don't like them, you can just paint them out. But I really kind of think it just adds a nice look. If you look at a lot of Impressionist painters, their skies usually start off with sort of an orange underpaint. And I think it just adds a nice little contrast here and there to the blue. Because it's a painting after all, you want it to look, there's a lot going on. It's not just what the trees and everything. You're looking at colors and textures and all kinds of things when you're thinking of your painting. Okay, so now you got a nice layer of that warm white. You can get some white, and this is where I have a lot of fun. I'll get a lot of white, and I'll get a little tiny touch of that cad yellow in there, just a touch. You don't want the paint to go yellow, but you want it to really look nice and white. And I'm just gonna dab on top some of those blossoms everywhere. So I'm just gonna dab some of that here and there. And I would paint, you know, really large scale versions of these, you know, 3 foot by 3 foot versions. They look really, really cool. The bigger they are, the better they look, these trees, when you paint them. So I'm just going to keep dabbing, and again, I can use, you know, get a palette knife and get some of that yellow ochre in there, or even a little touch of that orange to make the paint not just boring white. You know, if you put a little touch of orange, it just shines brighter. And you can really, sometimes when I would paint larger scale, I'll put little dabs of that, you know, I'll put some real dabs of bright white with my palette knife, and then we can go back and just tweak it a little. So now that I got that on there, you know, you can just kind of do the Van Gogh here and kind of swirl some of those little marks around, and creates a really nice flow if you know, just sort of have them going. I sometimes will dab in little circles like this. It just gives you the feeling of blossoms. I don't know. And I'll do that here just to spread this around. Like this. So now it's starting to look like spring here. And I'll get some more white and just go back over certain areas. And I like to put the odd dab over the tree stump like that to give it a nice, and I like to get some real clean whites and just dab a few into the all around. You know, you want it just, I really like to do that, but you don't have to. I just like the blossoms kind of going every which way. And you can always add a little stem later. It's like snowfall in spring. So I'm just kind of gonna keep adding some of that. Add a few dabs just to bring the tree forward. Even it helps to put a few of those blossoms in front. And then I'm gonna take some of this gray mix and a little bit of that white, maybe a little more orange in that mix. Make it a soft, warm, grayish white, and I'll put a few of those white tulips that are in the mix there, using that warm white. Now, if it doesn't look, it kind of gets confusing with the blossoms. So even though they're in the picture, I'm just going to do lighter pink. It just started to look like my paint was just getting mucked in there from above. So I'm going to go with a light pink instead of white. It just looked like I was putting white down. So you sort of have to use your reference photo as a reference, not as a complete guide here. Yeah, so now that's better because the white was making the tree and the foreground kind of go flat. So we'll just use that instead. And just adding some more of these red tulips here. Get a little more white into that red. Okay, so now you've got all of this white going on. You got your tree stumps. I like to add a little bit of a purpley blue, so I'll add some cobalt into my quinacridone and a little bit of white, and get a nice sort of blue color, to purpley blue, to put along the side of that tree to show the shadow. And if you look at Van Gogh, he used a lot of blues and really pretty colors in his shadows of his trees. So I just thought that would look good with the purple, and we'll put a little bit in this one. And then you can now start looking at, we can bring this green in a little tighter, and I'll get a little bit of the brown oxide and that blue, ultramarine blue, and just kind of just touch up that tree a bit, really make it stand out. And down here I'll put a little bit more detail in the where it's going in, and then I'll get some of that color, and I'll get a little black just to knock it down even more, and put a little bit of black. I'll put a little bit in. I'll use the edge of my brush and just put a few, little lines here and there to show that there's some little twig branches in there. But don't go over the top here. I probably have already gone over the top. That's how. So now you feel like the tree's kind of a little more of a tree. So I'm going to just add a little bit in here. Just a little, carry a few branches up there. And there. Okay, so if you think, oh boy, I did go over the top, just go and wash your brush. And you can use your brush and get some more of that original white viridian and brown oxide mix. And you could, dab a few dabs over some of them, if you think, oh no, I did exactly what I told you not to do, sort of thing. Or get some of the white and just dab a bit over. I sometimes do that anyways, just so some of the lines don't look so drawn on. And now you can go back, now that you've kind of got more an idea of where you're going, you can even add thicker paint like I do and get some more. And I'm trying to leave some of that shadow underneath, And you just want to look at, are you happy with the shape of everything? And I think I am. Sometimes it's like, for example, like this might get too square, so you just check out. You don't want like two big round, perfectly round snowballs, that's all. And I'll just kind of add a few more highlights to that light area. And you could go and get some sap green and darken that warm green mix, or just get, some sap and go in and put in a few. Maybe I need to darken it with some dioxazine violet and just get a few darker greens right in the front here. It will really bring your eyes forward to the foreground. And then so I'm getting in a little bit more of the dark. I could add some ultramarine blue in there into the sap and just get some real dark notes back in there. But I'm leaving the underpaint. I'm not painting it all over. I'm just getting in punching in a few more darks. It was just looking too. And you can even get some black here and there. If you feel bad about using black, don't feel bad. A lot of great painters use black. I just don't recommend it in the beginning because you just don't want to have black mixing in and ruining all the bright colors. So I'll just kind of pop in a bit of that in here and there, and you could just now look at some of the things that you can maybe work on a bit. Like, I think I'll just get a little more of this this light green mix, get a little yellow ochre, something in there just to, I'm just kind of lightening it one more level here, and I'm just gonna just add a few more lighter touches to these trees here. And then, you know, you can, if you can go back and reshape things. If you play with them too much, you can just go and reshape them a bit. And maybe want to soften some of these a little. Sometimes I'll even get some of that purple and put a little dab of that in the distance, you know, add some purple that I mixed for the trees with the quinacridone and the cobalt. I'll add a little white to that, and you can add some of that in. And I'll even take some cobalt and mix it in with my green and put in a few of the really blue, some real blue green in here, just to contrast a little with all the reds and pinks. I'll put a few notes of blue in here and there. And if you really want to go crazy, you can get some of that turquoise and then that phthalo turquoise and put the odd dab of that here and there, because that really gets your eye going. And if you have turquoise, you can just use turquoise. I just had phthalo turquoise out, but you can use just your regular cobalt turquoise color and put in some of those little bits of blue here and there. And you can get some of that blue, kind of get some cobalt blue and make up a little bit of that bluey purple color, kind of gray, and you could see how it looks in your tree. Put a little bit of that in there. Not purple enough. I'll just add more cobalt to my quinacridone red pink mix that I made, and put a bit of that purple in there. Here and there. Not, you don't have to go overboard, you know. But, and again, if you don't like it, you just go get some white and dab some more white down. And I just want to make sure I've got that bit of that more light green color in the horizon. Okay, so I think I'm pretty happy with all those different things that are going on. I just think that you can, let me just get They say when you run out of white, your painting is done. And I probably should stop and then let you continue from there doing whatever you want to do to your painting, but I might just take a little bit of cobalt and white. How about I use this here, white. I just wanted it to be whiter. I took too much cobalt. I meant to get the white and add a little bit of cobalt. And I'll just add a few little bits of cloud to the sky. Just add a few lighter blues here and there. My background's already kind of dried a bit, so my paint's kind of sticky, but that's okay. You can get a little more cobalt in there. See, now as my underpaint dried, I'll add a little bit of the darker blue back in and blend the edges a little. There, now you have some clouds in the sky. So you can imagine if you did this on a really huge canvas, it would look pretty cool. I'm just gonna clean up the blue around the tree here. And you can get some more cobalt and get some real dark sky up near the top of the canvas there can really look nice. But I'm sure you'll do a great job of this one. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. And feel free to send me an email or, post it to Bold Strokes and see what people think. And I look forward to seeing you in the next class. And thanks for watching and have a good time painting.